on a 65 square foot property is cash flow that ranges anywhere from 8% to 14%.
On this side?
On that side.
Right, okay.
So where's that coming from and why? Well, you've got places like, for example, a place like Atlanta where you can get anywhere from 12 to 14% cash flow. In places like Florida, if you're looking at places like Fort Lauderdale and even Daytona Beach, you're looking at cap rates of anywhere from 8 to 10%. In places like Arizona now, where the inventory is nearly now drawn out, you'll be lucky to get probably about 6 to 8% in the state of Arizona.
Okay.
And so that's sort of the apples and apples. That's the cost of entry. So here's the best part. When you're looking at right now average cost of entry, you're looking at you'll probably need about $65,000 to get into the U.S.
So $65,000.
Okay. Versus having to get into the market here in Toronto, you'll need a minimum of $450 in Toronto. And it could be a little bit less, it could be a little bit more. But for the most part, for a comparable, you've got yourself a challenge called, what can you afford?
Right.
What can you afford?
And that's where we can talk to our good buddy Jim Flaherty there and say, hey, I can afford a lot because interest rates are nice and low. But we're getting back to, I guess, the issue, which is here things can be financed.
Absolutely.
So the cost barrier to entry, if we can use that word, versus, the bang for the buck. So
Absolutely.
I guess, going right back to the very beginning, we're talking also a risk tolerance. They say, gosh, honey, do I want to spend all my money in cash here,
right, or
do I want to have the bank use leverage? There are different techniques, and I'm not trying to poo-poo the idea, but I certainly want to emphasize that without the fact that there's pluses on both. But
that's right. But right now we know investors are getting limited on lending.
Right.
We know that there's restrictions that are coming down the pipe. We know that the CMA, we know that the banks are now beginning to tighten up the amount of what they're permitting to lend to Canadians for investment purposes.
Got it. Yep.
In the States, what we have is a different phenomenon. You've got the fact that Americans can't buy, but you've also got this very interesting thing called currency. The dollar's at par. I went to go exchange $2,000 Canadian the other day. I got myself $2,010 back American. I made money. And so when the heck did that happen last? When my parents bought their first vacation property south of the border, it was around 2001. Well, a $100,000 condo cost them $142,000 because of the currency.
That's right.
So that very same condo not only would cost me $100,000, the very same condo is on sale for $88,000. So not only could I buy for $88,000 with no currency premium, I'm now up way ahead of my parents, not just because of the timing in the market, but because of the currency rates that are in the market. And so that trade-off begins to really come in your favor when you start to really hedge out what the risks really are.
Now, Richard, I just want to clarify because you're going so fast. There's so much information coming at me. So are you saying that someone can get into the market with $65,000?
That's correct. So the starting point to get into great sound U.S. real estate.
The phone should be ringing off the hook.
They should be.
There's books. There's $65,000 here.
But you know what the challenge is, Mark? What we know is that according to Wall Street Journal, 92% of the time when people are looking for an investment property, they start online. But 83% of the time, they end that search online. They never engage a professional, not a qualified realtor. They don't talk to anybody in particular.
Which we started our show talking about.
They do it all themselves. And so they end up going down, they jump on a plane, they pack their sandals, they buy a place in the heat of the moment, no pun intended, and they buy a place. But they don't take title properly, they forget about the taxation consequences, they enter without an exit in mind, and then they come back to professionals and lawyers who charge hourly rates to undo what they've done, to actually rethink a purchase that could have been thought through a little bit more carefully, more pragmatically, more Canadian if it were.
And you're